Hello guys, and welcome to this Tableau full course. This course is divided into 4 parts. The first one is the Tableau basics and concepts needed to start with Tableau. Then we will create sales dashboard with Tableau. We're going to create Netflix dashboard with Tableau. And finally, we will see the top 50 Tableau interview questions and answers. First of all, I assume that you have already installed Tableau Desktop on your computer, and in my case, I'm using Windows. So as we can see here, in order to work with Tableau, we have first to connect to a data source. We have here 3 different connections. We have the Tableau server. Tableau server is another type of Tableau products. So here we are using Tableau Desktop, and there exists Tableau server. So generally, each team in a company have its own folder in Tableau server where they can store some confidential data sources, some confidential files that only the team can use. And also generally we store what we call Tableau extracts, which is a type of data sources in Tableau server. So to connect to Tableau server, you have to put the link that you are using in the company in order to sign in. The second type, which is the type that we are going to use in this tutorial, which is connecting to a file. You can connect to different files, and mostly Excel files and CSV files are the most used, but you can connect to JSON file, Microsoft Access, PDF file, etc. The third type, which is connecting directly to the data center or to your database, and Tableau holds most of them. For example, if your company use AWS, for example, you want to connect to Amazon Athena, Amazon Aurora for MySQL, Amazon Redshift, or you are using Azure Data Lake, Storage GEN2, Azure SQL Database, Databricks, IBM DB2, Google Analytics, MySQL, PostgreSQL, etc. So Tableau offers or integrates with the different servers. As I said, in our case, we are going to work with an Excel file, and you can find the link in the description in order to download it. So click on Microsoft. It will direct you in the data sources folder within documents in your computer. So you click on Sample Superstore and click Open. Now that we have uploaded our Microsoft Excel file, we can see that we have 3 different tables. So table 1, which is orders, people, and returns. We have only one connection, which is Microsoft Excel file. You can add another connection. For example, if you have 2, 3, or 4 files, or you want to connect to a Tableau server, to connect to another server, you can click on add, and you can add a connection. So we are going to click on orders and drop it in here. So here we can see a lot of things. First, we have the dimensions. We have 21 fields and nearly 10,000 rows. So we have 21 columns and nearly 10k rows. Here you can define the number of rows that you want to display. Here we do have 100. You can put it 1000, and the maximum is 10,000. All right. So here it will display to you all the rows. Okay, so we have 9,994 in our case. So we come back to 100. Okay. All right. So here we see the connection. It can be live or extract. In our case, since it is an Excel file, it is the same thing to be in live or in extract. The difference between these two is the following. For example, if you are using a Hadoop database or another database type, data may be updated, for example, daily or each hour or each 3 hours. So each time the data is updated in a database, it will ask to be updated in Tableau. So if you are working with big data, for example, for millions to billions of rows, this may create a problem because you cannot change like 100 or 200 millions of rows in 3 to 4 seconds. So this may create an issue. What you need to do is that you need to create an extract, and for example, you define some rows and some columns that you will only use in your analysis, and even though there will be an update in the data source, it will not have an impact on your workbook. And to do that, we use the data source filter. So you click on add. So you can add different filters in here and create your extract. But we are not going to do that today because we are working with the CSV file and it has defined number of rows and columns which will not be updated during the tutorial. The second thing that we can see is the different data types. So we have here number, which is a whole. we can modify it to decimal, to date, to string, to boolean, and define a geographical role. Okay, so as you can see here, we have the row ID and it does not have any geographical role, and it is defined as a number. We have the date, which is defined as date. We have the shape date, shape mode, which is defined as a string, etc. So if you want to modify data type, you click on the data type and you change it, for example, to boolean, to date, to a number, etc. For example, if you see that you will not use customer ID, for example, or customer name, you can click in here and select hide. Okay, when you click on hide, it will be removed from your workbook. And the same thing, for example, for customer name, you can click on hide and it will be disappeared in your fields. As you can see here, we have now 19 fields and the number of rows is stable. Here we can refresh our data source. Here we can click on data and add new data source, refresh data source, duplicate, export data to CSV, etc. Here, as I said, if you want to sign in the server, or you can publish the data source. For example, if you are going to do some modifications, and for example, as we have said, you can create your extract and you can publish it in your Tableau server, Tableau public, and Tableau public can be used if you want to make your dashboard public. And now, if we want, for example, to create a relationship between people and orders, so you can drag and drop people in here and it will create for you a relationship. Okay, so if you click on relationship, orders to people, cardinality many to many, and related fields, region equals to region. Okay, so we are going to remove that. We are going to create a union. So we click on open, people, and it will create an inner join. Okay, so we have inner join, which means that it includes only values with matches in both tables. So the left join include all values in the left table, which means in orders, and all matches from right tables. The right is the inverse. It will include all values in the right table, which is people, and all matches from the left table, which is orders. And for the full outer, it will include all values from both tables. So members without matches show up as nulls. And for the joins, we can create up to 32 joins. For example, if we add returns in here, it will directly create another join. And the condition is that all the tables have to be in the same data source. Otherwise, Tableau cannot create all the joins. So as I said, in order to create the joins, we need to open our table and add the different tables in order to create the joins. So the difference between joins and unions is that the joins, it will add columns, whereas union, it will add rows. So now we are going to remove that and remove people, and we stay only, or we will connect only to orders. So we click to sheet 1. As you can see here, we can add new worksheet, new dashboard, or new story. For example, to create new worksheet, you click on that and it will create for you sheet 1, sheet 2. To change the title, double click on it and create, for example, test 1. And the same thing for the sheet test 2. Okay, and if we want to create a dashboard, you click on new dashboard and you can add different sheets. So for example, test 2 and test 1. In a worksheet, we can create only one chart or one plot, whereas in a dashboard, we can create and combine so many graphs and plots that are created in the worksheets. So dashboard is a combination of worksheets, whereas for a story, you can find either worksheet or dashboard. Okay, as you can see here, when we change the dashboard to worksheet, we cannot have two different things. For example, dashboard and worksheet, or worksheet and worksheet. Whereas in the dashboard, we can have two different worksheets. Okay, so this is the main difference. We start by worksheets and create our different graphs, for example, maps, highlight tables, stacked bars, etc. Then, if we want to combine all the worksheets together, we create a dashboard and import the worksheets that we want to use together. Or if you want to create a story, then we can use either dashboard or worksheet. Okay, so now let's create our first graph. As you can see here in our table, we have two categories. We have the dimensions and we have the measures. Okay, so we have two types. We have measure names and measure values. We can convert, for example, here convert to a measure, okay, product ID in a measure, and for example we convert sales to a dimension, okay, but it has no meaning, okay, to have a product ID as a measure. So we click on Control Z and we come back to our first case, which is product ID as dimension, and we have the sales as measure. Okay, so as you can see here, when we click on sales, it will give it in green, whereas when we click on, for example, region, it will be in blue. So one thing that you have to understand is that discrete values are in blue and continuous values are in green. Okay, so if we convert sales into discrete, it will be in blue, but it has no meaning, so it has to be a measure. When you see something or field in green, it means that it is continuous, and if it is in blue, it means that it is discrete. Here, when you click on show me, we can see the possible graphs that we can create with what we have selected. So in columns we have region, and in rows we have the sum of sales. So we can change that. Okay, we can create pie chart, we can create a tree map, etc. Okay, so we stay with stacked bars. Okay, we can change, for example, the aggregation, it is sum. Okay, so the measure is a sum. We can convert it to average, we can convert it to median, we can convert it to count, etc. Okay, so now we are going to see 5 different things. We have sorting, filtering, grouping, sets, and reference lines. We start by sorting. For example, we select cities, so we drag and drop cities into rows. Okay, and we drag and drop quantity into text. Okay, so here we see the different quantities in the cities. If we click in here, so we have sorted descending by sum of quantity within city, so we click on that, and we have the order. Or if we want the ascending order, we click in here. Okay, so if we click in here, we have the descending order, and here to change the view, we have the standard, fit width, so within width, fit height. Okay, so we are not able to see clearly in the worksheet, and we have the entire view. It is the same thing. Okay, so we click on standard and it will give us the series with the different quantities. We can change the sum into the average. Okay, so we click on that and measure. We have the count, for example, the count distinct. Okay, so we have different types of measures. Okay, so we stay with the sum. If we want to filter that depending on the region, so we click on region and drop it on filters. It will say to us if we want to, for example, in the central and in the east. We click on apply. Okay. to view or to see or to show the filter, we click on show filter and we have it in here. Okay, if we click on all, we have all the regions, so we have everything. If we click in here and customize, so show all values, okay, we don't want to show all values, and we can select, for example, single value as a slider. It has no meaning. Single value as drop down, so we have to select, for example, the central, the south. We can select only one value, or we can select value as a list. Okay, so here we have the filters. We can also select multiple values as a list, okay, or multiple values as drop down. Okay, so we select east, for example. Okay, so here it is about filtering. If we want to use another filter, for example, category, same thing. Okay, we want office supplies, apply, okay, and if we want to show the filter, okay, show filter, and the same thing. We can do the same thing. We can change the title, okay, so click on edit title, and for example we put it in bold and in 15, for example. Okay, so here we can change the title. If we want to clear the filter, we click on clear filter and clear filter. Okay, now if we want to create a group, okay, so we drag and drop, for example, a group of cities, we click on city, and we can create a lot of things. We can change the alias, for example, if we want to change city and give it another name. We can transform it, okay, we can group by, create an hierarchy, so the hierarchy we are not going to create it yet. You can create, we can change the data type, we can convert it to a measure, and we can create a lot of things. For example, calculated field, group, set, and parameter. So we are going to create a group. For example, we call it city group, okay, city group, and we are going to, for example, select, okay, we are going to find, okay, for example, words that start with A, okay, we write it, start with A, find all, and we group it. So here we change the name to group A, for example, group A, okay. We can create another group like starts with B, find all, and we create on group, we call it group B, okay, and we select include other, so everything else will be in other. So apply, okay. So here we have three different groups. We have group A, standard, okay, and if we want to know the quantity, for example, in each group, we create here and we select the measure count distinct. Okay, for example, we have group A, group B, and other, or the total. And if you want to select, for example, the number of cities in each group, so we have measure count distinct. In group A, we have 27 cities that start with A, 34 cities that start with B, and 470 other cities. Now, if we want to create, for example, a set, okay, so we create city, we select create set, okay, and we create, for example, the top 10 cities depending, for example, by field, so top 10, and for example the total of sales. So we select the top 10 cities depending on the sum of sales. Okay, so create an OK, and we put cities in the rows. We have said that the total sales, the sum of the sales, we are going to order that and sort that on the descending order, and we put our series set in the filters. Okay, so it will directly select the top 10 series depending on the sum of cells. Okay, and generally when we work with sets, we have to select add to context. So add to context, which means that we are using context filters, and context filters are executed before the sets. Okay, now to create reference lines, we are going to create another graph depending on the date. For example, if we put ship date in the columns, okay, and here it is automatically selected by years, so we can change it to quarter, month, day, and more, customize, and for example year, quarter, and year, etc. So we clicked on the exact date, it will give us the exact date. Okay, and for example we want to select the quantity sold in each day. Okay, so the quantity, and to make it clearer we can click on the ship date, put it in filters, years, next. For example, we want to know the total of, we selected the total of the quantity sold in 2014. Apply, okay. So here we have the ship date and we have the quantity sold. Okay, we can right click on the axis, click on edit axis. Okay, and for example you can modify the title or you can remove the title. We can do the same thing in here, right click, edit axis, so remove the title. Okay, we can for example include or not include 0. So to add a reference line, we can right click on the axis, okay, and add the reference line. So reference line, for example, we can create constant, and we can give it, for example, some modifications have been done on, for example, April the 2nd, 2014. Okay, we can select the type of the line, okay, and click on OK. So it will add automatically the line in April 2nd, 2014. Okay, we can add a horizontal line, so this is a vertical line, and we can add a horizontal line, for example, add a reference line, for example, the average, the quantity average, and for example, we can add a line like that in black and click on OK. So it will give us the average, okay? The average from the start date to the end date. For example, if we want to create dual axis graph, we can create on, we can press Control key and drag and drop the sum, okay? So in the second graph, we want to put it as an area chart, okay? And the first graph, for example, we want to put it in black, line chart in black. So if we click on dual axis, it will automatically create a new graph, okay? So this is to create a dual axis graph. And to understand better the different things that we have in this worksheet, like for example, we have worked with filters, with the marks, we have worked with colors, we have worked with label, and for example, for the tooltip, it is what we are seeing here when we click on or when we move the mouse on the graph. Okay, for example, we can change it by clicking on tooltip. Okay, and we can click, like for example, total quantities, total quantity, for example, shipped on, for example, the date. Okay, so here this is the sum. Okay, for example, is total quantity shipped on, can put the date in here. Okay, and remove the ship date. Okay, when you click on OK, it will be modified. Okay, So total quantity shipped on May 30th is 27. Okay, this is to change the tooltip. Okay, for the path, you can change it into square, for example, and to zoom, you can click on your mouse and select the part of the graph that you want to zoom in, and you click on keep only. Okay, so you are going to see the second graph. Okay, so we are going to remove that. Okay, you see it as in step. Okay, as step function. Okay, we click on Control Z and Control Z, so we come back to our original path. Okay, the size is the same thing, so it will be clearer if we create another worksheet. Okay, so if we create another worksheet, for example, we want to select, let's say, okay, ship date, ship date, okay, let's say by month. Okay, and the cells, it will be in a bar chart. Okay, and if we select the exact date, okay, we can also select only 1 year. For example, ship date, we select 2014, apply. Okay, and you can change the size. Okay, so the size is manual, and we can increase or decrease the size. Okay, so it depends on your use. The label, we have talked about the label, the size, the color. Okay, for example, if we want to change the color, and also for the detail, it is generally, for example, if you want to add, for example, the year into the tooltip, you put it in detail, and you select, for example, if it was not in here, you can say insert, and you can find it. Okay, so you click on OK, and you will see everything on your tooltip. Okay, so this is about the marks. And now, for example, if we want to create a map, okay, so here, if we want to create a map, we can select the state. Okay, and when we click on the state, it won't give us anything. We have 49 unknowns. So Tableau does not recognize directly the states. What we are going to do is that we are going to create a hierarchy. Okay, so country, create, or hierarchy, create hierarchy. So we call it my hierarchy. Okay, okay, and we add the state to the country. So hierarchy, add to hierarchy, we have our hierarchy. Now, if we click on the state, it will give us the states, the United States of America. We are going to select field map. Okay, so you click on map, and for example, it will depend on the cells. Okay, so the colors will be in the cells. Okay, as you can see here, we have here a legend. So if you want to remove the legend, you can click on analysis, legends. Okay, if you want to remove it, or you want to display your legend. Okay, you can use filters. For example, if you want to see central legend, okay, show filter, want to see the east and the central. Okay, so you can select everything that you want. You can also change the title, so edit title, you can write my title. Okay, or my map. Okay, can change it like that in bold, for example 16, apply. Okay, you can format your title. Okay, format, for example border. Okay, you add a border. Shading, for example, you put it in this color. You can also format your worksheet, right click on the worksheet and click format. For example, you can modify the pen, the header, okay, so the title, for example, the tooltip, okay, everything will be changed. We can do the same thing for the previous graphs, okay. So here we have the dual chart, we can right click on the worksheet and click on format. So you are going to format everything, okay. Okay, so we are going to add black lines, the header the same thing, and the row divider the same thing, okay. We can do the same thing for the colors, okay, for the cell, the pan and the header, column divider the same thing, okay. So here we can also format title or edit title. We call it dual chart, okay, bold 16, apply, okay. Click on format title and you add border, you add shading, the same thing, okay. So here we have modified the dual chart, we have defined our map. Now if you come back in here, okay, and you remove the city set, you have the sum of cells, okay, and you want to create what we call a calculated field. So create calculated field. So we call it more or cells more than 20k, more than 20k, okay. So we write if sum of cells is greater than 20k, then 1, else 0, end, okay. So here we created calculated field, okay, okay. We convert it to discrete, and we are going to put it in the filters. So we want everything or the sum of cells which is greater than 20k, apply, okay. So we will have everything that is greater than 20k. So this is called a calculated field. Now for example, if we want to create a table of or want to use calculations tables, we are going for example to create another worksheet. And for example, if we want to see year over year growth, okay. So we are going to select the years, okay, ship date for example, okay, in the columns, year over year, and the total sales we are going to put it in text, okay. And we are going to add the different cities, okay. So here we have the different cities, and if we want to create table calculation, so quick table calculation, we have for example running total, difference, percent of total, rank, percentile, moving average, compound growth rate, and year over year growth, okay. So this is about the year over year growth. And if you want to select icon, okay, keep only, so we can visualize the year over year growth of the city. Now we are going to create parameters. As you can see here in this sheet, we have selected a filter that is 2024. We cannot change dynamically the date. So what we are going to do is that we are going to create two parameters and a calculated field in order to change the date dynamically, okay. So we remove the filter, okay. We create parameter, we call it start date, okay. It will be a date, okay, and it is range. So add values from order date. The range, it is okay, and we are going to create, okay, so just modify this, the name, edit, okay, it is start. Okay, we are going to create another parameter, we call it end date. Okay, and date, it is also a date, it is range, values from, we said order date. Okay, then we create another parameter, we call it create not parameter, calculated field, we call it study period. So if we say order date is less than or equal than start date and order date, sorry, it is the inverse. Okay, it is greater than start date and less than end date, then 1, else 0, end. Okay, apply. Okay, so we convert that into a discrete and we put it in the filters. So we convert it to a dimension. Okay, study period 1, apply. Okay, so we start date show parameter, end date show parameter, and we are going to select our date. So as you can see here, we can change the date dynamically without zoom in or de-zoom in. Okay, we have selected here the order date, so we have to move the ship date and put order date, not state, order date. It is the exact date. Okay, and it will change dynamically. Okay, so this is the purpose of using parameters. We can also edit the worksheet. So edit access, we move the title, same thing in here, edit access, I'm going to move the title, we change format, edit title, so total sales, total sales, apply. Okay, so if we format that shading, it will be also with this color border. Okay, no, not this one, tag, and format title, not for edit title, it will be in the middle, bold, and 16, apply. Okay, so right click, format, so we are going to edit the worksheet. Okay, sheet. Okay, put everything in bold. For the line, we can do the same thing for the sales, the pane, and the header. Okay, the row divider and the column divider. Okay, so we have everything in here. Now if we want to create our dashboard, okay, so we delete that and we are going to define our dimensions. Okay, so we are going to add the width. Okay, like this, and I can add the width. All right, and here when you add worksheet, you can add them in a floating mode. Okay, or you can add them in standard mode. Okay, for example, if I convert this one into floating, okay, so I can change it as I want. Okay, this is floating. Now if I add the map, okay, I will also convert the map into floating. Okay, and you can change the size as you want, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna just leave it as it is. Okay, so if I want to add the map, I'm gonna add it in here, and if I want to add another sheet, I'm gonna add it in here. Okay, so we have the total sales, the dual chart, and we have also the map. Okay, so here is our dashboard, and if we want to apply everything to all the worksheets, you click on, for example, apply to worksheets, all using this data source, and you can see we have an interactive dashboard. So if we click on this, everything will change. Okay, so this is our dashboard, just to make to understand how exactly can we work with the different dashboards. So now if we want to export our dashboard, we can click on dashboard, export image, and you can save your dashboard as an image. First, we are going to import our CSV file. To do that, we click on to file, more. You look for the folder where you have put the CSV file, and you double click on it in order to put it in Tableau. The link to download the CSV file is available in the description. So first, let's see what we have in our data set. As I said, it is about video games sales. So we have 11 fields, so 11 columns, and nearly 70k rows. We have the rank for each name of the video game. We have the platform, the year, the genre, the publisher, and we do have the total sales, which are divided into 5 different columns. We have North America sales, Europe sales, Japan sales, other sales, and global sales. So let's go to worksheet and create our first graph. So we click on sheet 1. For example, if we want to create the total sales by year, okay? So we can do, for example, one graph for Europe sales, another worksheet for global sales, another worksheet for Japan sales and North America sales, etc. So this will take a lot of time and a lot of space in our dashboard. So to work in a smarter way, we are going to create a parameter and a calculated field, which we will use as a filter in order to have all the cells in one graph. So we will only need to play on the filter. So to do that, we click on create parameter. We call it zone cells. So data type, it will be string, and allowable values, it will be a list. So we put our values here. So we put EU sales, we write global sales, Japan sales, we have North America sales, and finally we have other sales. Okay, so you click on OK, right? So we have here our parameter. Now we create a calculated field. So create calculated field, we call it same thing, zone sales. Okay, and we use case statements. So we have case, right, zone sales. So we write when we have Europe sales, no, put it like string U sales, then we will have Europe sales. Okay, when we have, for example, global sales,
then select for me global sales, right? When Japan sales, same thing, GP sales, okay, then select for me Japan sales, okay. When we have North America sales, then select for me North America sales, okay. And finally, when other sales, then select for me other sales, alright, and apply, okay. Now we start our visualization. We said we put the year in the columns, okay, so we have the different years, alright, and we want to visualize the zone sales, okay. As we have said, we can visualize Europe sales, for example, and then we do another worksheet for global sales, etc. But here, what we are going to do is that we are going to visualize the sum of zone sales, okay. And here we filter data, right? So we don't want to have null values. And then you click on show parameter, okay. Here you can change, for example, we have global sales, we have other sales, and we have, for example, North America sales, okay. So it is much better than having 5 worksheets. So we can rename the worksheet as sales by years, okay. And for example, we can duplicate that. So we press on Control key, you put the sum in here. The first one, we are going to make it in black, okay. Not this one. So the first one, it is in black, and the second one, it will be an area chart, okay. And we put it, for example, in blue. Or we click on more colors and we select another, for example, this one, okay. So just to change the color, we click on dual axis to create our graph, okay. So here we have our graph, and for example we can add for example genre into the colors, for example where we have put the area chart, okay. So we can drag and drop genre into the colors. Thus we will have the different area charts for each genre depending on the years, okay. We can also put the genre into the filters, for example show filter, right, and we change it into multiple value drop down. This will allow us to compare the different sales, for example in North America, okay. So we have selected North America sales. We can, for example, compare the genre. Let's say we compare action and racing, okay. For example, action and racing between 1980 and 2020, okay. For example, if you want to create and to zoom into the years using a filter, we can create another parameter, okay. We call it create parameter, right, and we put it start date. It's gonna be an integer, right, and we put it a range. So select values from, we put year, so this is the start date, okay. And we create another parameter, okay, create parameter, call it end date, same thing as an integer, and it will be a range. Select add values from the year, okay, we put it okay. Then we create another calculated field, so create calculated field, study period, okay. If year, okay, is greater or equal than start date and year is less or equal than the end date, so the different parameters that we have created, then give me 1, okay, else give me 0. So end, apply, okay. So we are going to convert it into a dimension first, okay, convert to dimension, and then we put it into the filters, we select 1. So we want our period to be between start date and end date. Apply. Okay. Then we click on show parameter and show parameter, right? So here we can drag and drop the legend into the bottom, and we can move and play with our date. Okay. So for example, we want to compare in the sales in Europe for adventure and fighting between 1996 and 2013. Okay, so here we have our data. We can also select all and select all the period. Okay, so here we have dynamic and an interactive chart, and it is better than having multiple worksheets to create chart for Europe, global, North America, other sales, and other for genre, etc. Okay, so it is much better to have these parameters that help us to create an interactive plot. Okay, so here we have our legend. The blue is action. For example, if you click on action, adventure, right, misc, etc. Now we are going to do some modifications. So edit axis, right? So we remove the year. We know that it is years. We do the same thing for the other axis. So we remove the titles, and this also will help us to gain space. Okay, as you can see here, we can change the name, so we have by years and genre. Okay, we double click on the title, we select, we put it in the middle in bold, and we change it into black. Apply. Okay, we're going to format our worksheet. Okay, so here we do have, we put it in black and bold, right? We put the, okay, so we add the borders. So for the cell it will be in black, for the pen same thing, and for the header. Okay, we can also format the title. Okay, format title, and we put, for example, shading, we put this color, right? Okay, so here we have our first chart. Okay, we can also edit the titles and the filters and the parameters, but we are going to do that when we create our dashboard. So this is the sales by years and genre. So we have the sales and the genre. We can also play with the years, right? Same thing. So we have created the genre, we have created the year. Now, for example, we can create the different, now we can show the different sales by, for example, name. Let's say the top 10 names by sales. Okay, so we create, for example, top 10 names by sales. Okay, so we do the same thing. We use the created calculated field. Okay, we put it in the rows, right, and or in the columns. Then we put the names in the rows. Okay, so we are going to sort that, and we create a filter. So we said top 10 names. Okay, so the top by field, so top 10 by the zone sales. Okay, apply. Okay, we convert it to the entire view, and we can add, for example, you click on control, you press on control key, you put the sum in the labels, right? We can change the color, it will be in blue, right? We can edit the axis, so here we have Pokemon, we have same thing, and we have the different names up to the 10th. This is for, as we can see here, we can show the parameter, right? Show parameter. So here we are in Japan. We go into North America, it will directly change to Wii Sports, Super Mario, etc. If we go, for example, to Europe, same thing. Okay, it will change. We can do the same thing for the date, for example, start date and the end date. We need to put the study period into the filters 1, apply. Okay, so we show the parameters, show parameter, and same thing, show parameter, right? So we can play with different years, right? You can see too much change in here, but starting from 2009 there is change. Okay, now this is for the filter, right? And we do the same thing, we do some modifications. So set by top 10 names by sales. Okay, top 10 name by sales. We do the same thing, so we are going to put it in the middle, in bold, right, in black. Apply. Okay, we remove or hide field labels for rows, and we format our worksheet. Okay, so it will be in black and bold, and the same thing for the title. So we are going to format title, and we put a shading like blue or this one. Okay, so here we have the top 10 names by sales. We can just duplicate that. Okay, and we for example here we have the publisher. Okay, so we have the name. Now we can visualize the platform. So we put platform in the rows, we sort, same thing, and we are going to create the top 10. Show filter, right? No, not show filter, but filter top by field. We have the top 10. Apply. Okay, so here we do have the top 10. We change the name. Okay, so top 10 platforms by sales. Okay, so duplicating is much better to avoid doing the same modifications. Okay, since here we only want to change the name, and here we have the sum of the cells by the zone. Okay, if we change for example to Japan, it will be changed. Okay, for example if we go to North America, same thing. All right, so we have top 10 platforms by sales. We have the platforms in the rows, the sum in the columns, and we remove the name. Okay, so we don't leave the name in the filters, right? And here we are going to have the top 10. Okay, top 10 sales or top 10 platforms by sales. Okay, we have the zone of sales, and we have the study period. Okay, so here we have the top 10 platforms. Here we have the top 10 names. As you can see here we have name in the filter, and here we do have platform in the filter, right? We can duplicate that and do the same thing for the publisher, right? You can also change the type of the graph. For example, if we want to have, for example, a tree map, or we do have, if you want to have, for example, a bubble chart, for example. Okay, and for example, you can change here the color. So we add the sum into the label. So can we see the sum? And we can change the color, right? Edit color. For example, we can put it in blue. Sign palette. Apply. Okay, but when we change it into this, it will be, so the color will depend on the platform, but we want the color that will depend on the sum. Okay, so the darker is the color, the more cells we have in the zone. So we put the platform as detail, and we press Control key, and we change the sum into the colors, right? We do the same thing for the label. Okay, so the darker, the bigger is the circle, the more cells we do have. Okay, so we have the entire view, right? If we change it to Europe, okay, same thing, but we do have the name, the sum of cells in detail, and we change it into color, right? Okay, so here we have changed the color will depend on the sum, the size the same thing, it will depend on the sum, and we have the labels. Okay, so we have the platform and the total sales. If we change it for example to Japan, okay, if we change it to North America, right? So we have the different values. We can leave it as it is. Okay, so the sum of the zone cells will depend on the color. So the darker the color, the more cells we have. And we can do the same thing for the publisher. So we click in here, duplicate. So top 10 cells or top 10 publishers by cells. Okay. All right. So we have top 10 publishers by cells. And here, as we have said, we remove the name, we put the publisher in the rows, we sort that, we click on filter, top 10, okay, apply. All right, so here we have the publisher, top 10 publishers by sales, and we have the sum, and we have also the date. So we can change it into Europe, we can change it into global, change it to North America. But if we remove the year, as you can see here, okay, so Nintendo has before 2007 it was in the top. Okay, it was the first or the second. Okay, but starting from 2010, okay, it has lost one place. Okay, and in 2016, we have Ubisoft, to have Electronic Arts that took the the first position and second position in North America. Okay, so we have used all the genre, the names, the platforms, and the publishers. All right. For example, same thing in here. We can change it into another chart. For example, we can use tree map, right? And we can add the sum into the labels. So here we can see the total sales. Okay. Same thing when we change it to Europe, change it to global sales. Okay. So we have the sales by years, right? Top 10 names by sales, top 10 publishers by sales, top 10 platforms by sales. Okay, so we have used all these terms. We can also create another KPIs, for example, total names, total platforms, total publishers, and total genre. Okay, so we write total names in the dataset. All right, okay, we press OK. To do that, we put name in text and we put count D. Okay, so we measure count D, right? Same thing, we put it in the entire view. We format that, okay? So the alignment, it will be in the middle, right? We put it in black, bold, for example, in 10, right? We can change the title. So we can put it, for example, here in 12 and in black, apply, okay? We can also format the title. Okay, if we put another shading, for example, we put this color, and we have total names in the dataset, right? We can also, so we'll duplicate that, and we can see the total platforms. Okay, so we have platform in text, and we put count D, right? So we have 31 platforms. We change it to total platforms in the dataset. Total platforms, okay. We can do the same thing for the publisher, so we'll duplicate that, duplicate, we change it to publishers, right? Publishers, right? And we put here publishers in count D, right? Text, and we change the measure into count distinct, okay? So we put the measure in count distinct, so we have 579 publishers, and finally we have so we created the platforms, the names, the publishers, and we have genre. Okay, so we duplicate that, duplicate total genres. Okay, so we change the title into total genres, right? Genre, and we put here genre, right? So we have the count measure. You select count D. We have 12. Okay, so this is for the different. So this is for the different charts and graphs that we have created in our data set. So we have here the dimensions and we have the measures. We have created our parameters and our calculated fields, right? So we have the names, the publishers, platforms, and the names. So we have total names, total genera, platforms, and so what we can create also, we can create another chart, okay? So for example, create new worksheet, okay? Since it is very important to know the total sales by genera, so we create total sales by genera, right? So we put the genera into the columns, right? And we put the total sales, so zone sales, into the rows, right? So we order that and we select the entire view. We can change the color into the blue, right? And we press Control key, we put it into the label, right? We select the study period, right? 1, apply, okay. And we select our zone, so show parameter, right? Global sales, Europe sales, and North America sales. That will depend on the date, so start date and end date, okay. So as you can see here, it will change depending on the year, and it is an interactive chart, right? So total sales by genre, can change the title. So we do some modifications. We will hide the field, and same thing, we edit the axis, right? And we format our chart. So click it on format, so it will be bold in black, right? We change it into black, same thing for the header, and you can rotate, for example, our label, okay? So it will be action, sports, shooter, etc., right? We can also change our title, so it will be bold black, apply, and we can format our title, right? So we select the shading, the same thing as the first ones, okay? So this is for the different worksheets that we have created. Now we will create our dashboard, okay? So select here new dashboard, and you define your size. Okay, so first to define the size. Okay, so for example, I can increase the width, okay. All right, the height, for example. All right, and we start importing our worksheets, okay. So we start by the first one, which is sales by year. Then we have sales by genre, okay. Then we can add the top 10 by or the top 10 here, so okay, top 10 publisher by sales, and we select entire view, same thing in here, same thing in here. We add the top 10 here, so the top 10 names, and we have also the top 10 platforms, okay. So you can rearrange them as you want. We can add the zone sales, so we put it here. We have the start date, and we do have the end date, okay. So we are going to put end date, we put them in here, okay. All right, the zone sales, we don't need that, and we can change, for example, our dimensions, okay. So we are going to put that in here. Same thing for the map, right? We can increase the height, okay, if you want to, if you have, okay. Then we do have our filters or our parameters, right? Okay, for the genre, it is, we can put it in Florin, okay, Florin, and we can put it in here, right? We can also format the parameters, okay. So click on format parameters, right? So the alignment will be in the center. And for the shading, for example, you can choose this one or this color. Okay, so this is for the parameters. Then we can change or edit our legend. So format legend, it will be in the center. Okay, border we can be in black. Same thing for the genre. So format filters and set controls, it will be in the center. Okay, and for the border it will be in black. So this is for the genre. And as you can see here, if we change the zone, it will be changed in all the different graphs, right? So the top 10 publisher, top 10 platforms, top 10 names. Okay, so you can rearrange them as you like. Okay, so here we have the different names and the top 10 platforms, the top 10 publishers. Okay, as you can see here, if we change the end date, it will change in all the platforms. Okay, same thing for the start date, we change in all the charts. Same thing for the sales, for Japan sales, for example. Okay, so we have our interactive dashboard. Now we can add the KPIs, which represent the totals. Okay, so we have the total names, we have the total genres, we have the total platforms, and we have the final, which is total publishers. Okay, all right, now we can rearrange that. For example, total platforms, total publishers, right, and finally total names. Okay, so we can just rearrange. All right, we can increase this one a little bit and put them in here. If you want, for example, we can leave it as it is for the titles. Okay, and here we have our final dashboard. Okay, so we can change that a little bit in here. Decrease. So here we do have our final dashboard for the video games sales, and you can save that, for example, as an image. So you can click on export dashboard, export image, and you can save it as an image where you can see all the different KPIs and the different graphs that you have created. First, we are going to import the CSV file. So we click on more and you look for the path where you have saved the Netflix titles file. So you click on file, open, and here we have our data. So we have 12 fields and more than 6K rows. So each movie has a show ID. We have the type, it can be a movie or TV show. We have the different titles as string. We have different directors, the cast. So we have the date added, so date added on Netflix, and the release year. We have the rating, the duration. So if it is a movie, you have 94 minutes, 90 minutes, or if it is a TV show, then you have the different seasons, you have different categories, and you have the description. If we go to the worksheet, so we have here the different fields. Okay, so we have the dimensions, and we have the latitude and longitude for the country. As you see here, we have the geographical role is defined as a country, so we have the different countries. And to start, for example, we can plot the different TV shows and movies added to Netflix by date. So if we put the date added in the columns, and we put the so the show ID in the rows, and it will be a count, so measure, it will be count distinct. Okay, and we bring the type in the colors. Okay, so we can see here TV show, and we have here the movies. Since, as we have seen, the year has null values, we can filter that. So we press on Control key, you drag the years in the filters, and click years, next, and we omit null values. Apply. Okay. So as we can see here, we have the total movies and TV shows by years, starting from 2008 until 2020. We can convert that to an area chart, and we can change the colors. So as you know, for Netflix, it is with shading or the background, which is black, and it is written in red. So first we are going to omit that, so hide the field. We are going to edit the axis. Okay, so we remove the title. We can define it here as an entire view, so we can change the title. We can name it, for example, total movies and TV shows by, for example, yes, by year. So we define it in the middle, put it in bold, and we change the color. So if you don't have the red, you can click on more colors and you can define it in here. So we put it in red. Okay, we are going to change the background, so click on you right click on the worksheet format, and here you go to sharing, so the worksheet, it will be in black. Okay, so we are going to remove the grid lines, so you go to rows, grid lines, and you click on none. Okay, and for the text, we are going to put them in white. Okay, and you put them in bold like that. We can also change the colors of the TV shows and the movies, so we click on color, edit color, and we put it in red. So click on red. For the movie, we put it in dark red, and for TV show in light red. Apply. Okay, so we have here and now if we don't want to see the legend, so we can click on hide card, and we click on or press on Control key and click on type, put it in label. So here we do have the TV movies, the total movies and the TV shows by years. Okay, apply. Okay, so we can rename the worksheet, we call it total movies and TV shows by year. Okay, TV shows by years. Okay, then we are going to create the new worksheet. Okay, and for example, we want to create a map. Okay, that define each country by color, and the darker is the color, the more movies that this country has released. Okay, so we double click on country, we'll have all the defined countries. We change automatic to field map. Okay. For the announce, we click on filter data. Then for the title, we can change it to total movies. Okay. So we write total movies and TV shows. Okay. By country. Put it in the middle in bold, and we put it in red. Apply. Okay. We change the background of the worksheet, so we right click on the worksheet format and we go to sharing, put it in black. We do the same thing for the map, so we click on map, background maps, and we click on dark. Okay. For the color of the map, we can change it to red, or we can change it later on when we add the count of the show ID. So we drag and drop show ID into no show ID into colors. Okay. And when we put, we are going to click on measure count distinct. Okay. And we change the color into red. Okay. Edit colors, we are going to change it to red. Apply. Okay. So as you can see here, we have the count or the total movies and TV shows by country. As you can see here, the United States has the highest value, and the remaining they have 50 up to the least value, which is 1. Okay, so we can rename that total movies and TV shows by country. Okay, we can create another worksheet that we will in which we are going to select the top 10 genres. Okay, the top 10 types of movies. Okay, for example, we have drama, we have romantic movies, and we have, for example, horror movies. So we are going to click on top 10 genres. Okay, so we are going to select the different listed in. Okay, and here we are going to show to put the same thing, show ID in text, and we put the measure, which is the count distinct. Okay, we're going to order that, and we select the top 10. So we click in here, filter top by field, so we have the top 10 by the count distinct of show ID. So you click on apply. Okay, so here we do have the top 10. Okay, we can drag and drop the count ID into the columns. Okay, so we will have the horizontal bars. We hide the field for rows. We do the same thing. We edit the axis and we remove the title. Okay, we can give some space in here, so we can change the title, put it in the middle in bold, and we put it in red. Apply. Okay, we do the same thing for colors in here. We put them in red, and we change the background, so the format worksheet. Okay, we have the shading worksheet, and it will be in black. We do the same thing for the text, so we change it into white, bold, and we are going to remove the columns grid lines. Okay, so we go in here for lines, grid lines in the columns, and we put it to none. Okay, so here we have the top 10, and we can add, for example, we press on control key and we drag the count into label. Okay, so here we have the different values depending on each type. Okay, so we have the commentaries with 299, we have standby comedy, etc. Now, for example, we can add the different, so as we have seen here, we have two types, so we can create a chart that give us the percentage and the total of movies or TV shows depending on the type. Okay, so we call it movies and TV shows. We call it distribution. Okay, so same thing. We put the type in the rows, for example. Okay, and we put the show ID in text. We put the count distinct. Okay, and it gives us the value. But if you want, you can change it to a visualization. For example, we can change it to a highlight table, for example, stacked bar, or for example, packed bubbles. Okay, as you can see here, it gives us much more information than table. Okay, we can add, for example, we press on Control key and we put the label, so the total in the inside the bubbles. We can also add the percentage if you want to. So you press on Control key, you put it in detail, okay, and you can change it to quick table calculation, okay. So we have quick table calculation, and we select percent of total, okay. We convert it to label, and here we have the percentage. Okay, we drag it to the down like that. Okay, so we have for the movies we have 4,269, which represents 68.42% of the total. Okay, we can do the same thing. We can change the title. Okay, we put it in bold and in red. Apply. Put it in red. Apply. Okay, we can hide the card and we select the entire view. We can also format that. Okay, so we select the worksheet. Okay, the sharing worksheet, it will be in black, and here we do have the total movies and TV shows by with a percentage and the exact value. Okay, so now we can add another worksheet, for example, for the ratings. Okay, for example, we call it ratings. Okay, and we put the ratings in the column. Okay, we put it in the entire view, and for example we put the show ID in the rows, count ID, count distinct, sorry. So we order that, and as you can see here we have TV MA, which is in the first position, and we have TV 14, TV PG, etc. So we can add the count into the labels. Sorry, so we press Control key, count into the labels, then we change the color into red. We can format that, so we put the worksheet in black, we put the grid lines of the rows into none, and we change the text into white and bold. Okay, so we edit the axis, we remove it, we remove the title, we do the same thing for the rating, hide the field, and we put the rating, we put it in bold, in the middle, and in red. Okay, apply. Okay, so this is for the ratings. And now with these five first worksheets, we have covered the geographical data type, which is in our case countries. We covered the total movies and TV shows added by date. We have covered the genre, so we have the top 10 by genre,
and we have the ratings, and of course we have the total of movies and TV shows with their percentage. Now for the remaining fields, for example, uh, we can select a movie, and for example we can see its description. So for example, we first select the type, okay, filter, for example, a movie, okay, apply, okay. So we're going to show the filter type, we remove all, and we put single value drop down. Then once we select the type, we select the title. Okay, so show filter. So we are going to remove all, and we are going to select single value drop down. What we are going to do now, for example, when we select the type movie, if we don't want to see the titles of TV shows in here, we can change that to only relevant values. Okay, so we will have only the titles of the movies. The same thing when you select TV shows, you will not find the titles of the movies, you will only find titles of the TV shows. Okay, what we want to find is the description. Okay, we want to display description, and we put it in the entire view. So we change the title into description, we put it in the middle, and we put it in bold in red. Okay, we do the same thing for the format, sharing, and we put it in black. So for the description, for the text, we're going to put it in white, and we put the text into in the middle. Okay, header, the same thing, in the center. Okay, this is for the description. As you can see here, we can also change the format filters. Okay, so the font which is going to be in the shading, it is in black, and the font, it is in white. Okay, so each movie or each TV show has description, has duration. So if it is a movie, it will be in minutes. If it is a TV show, it will be in seasons. It has a rating, it has a release year. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to rename that description, apply. Okay, so we call it description. Okay, and we are going to duplicate that. So we right click, duplicate, and for example we change it to date added. Okay, so date added, we select OK, we change it here to date added. Okay, apply, we remove the description, and we put date added. Okay, so we have 2019. We do the same thing for the duration, so we duplicate, we change it to duration. Okay, apply, OK, we change it to duration, and we change the text into duration. Okay, so since it is TV show, it will be 2 seasons. So we have also the rating, we do the same thing, duplicate, we call it individual rating since we have or only rating. Okay, we change the title into rating, apply, OK, so we replace it by rating. For example, if it is a movie, TV 14, we have the release year. Okay, duplicate, we have release year. Okay, and we change it here into release year, apply. Okay, so we have here release year, and finally we are going to put the genre. Okay, oh sorry,
So we duplicate that. So we change it here, apply, okay, and we are going to change it here into listed in. Okay, so we have to select that the this filter, okay, apply to worksheets, selected worksheets. So we select the last five. So we have genre, release year, rating, duration, and date added. Okay, okay. So we do the same thing for the title, apply to worksheet, selected worksheets, genre, release year, rating, duration, and date. So when we put them in the dashboard, we need only to put one filter, and this filter is going to be applied to the last five worksheets. Okay, whereas for the first five that we have created, so total movies, top 10 genre, movies, TV, and ratings, this is, as you know, the general description of our data set. Okay, okay, so now we are going to create our dashboard. Okay, so we call it Netflix. Okay, we can rearrange the dimensions, for example 12, or I put it into, okay, maybe 1600. Okay, okay, very good. And we are going to use the standard. We are not going to use the floating. Okay, as you can see here, the tilt or the floating. And we start by adding the first one, which is the total movies and TV shows by year. Okay, we are going to format the dashboard into black. As you can see here behind the title, it is in white, so we put it in black. Okay, very nice. Then we are going to add the top 10 by genre. Okay, we are going to add the map. Okay, like that. We are going to add the total. Okay, the sum, and we have the ratings. Okay, so now since we do have everything, going to increase the height. Okay, we put it 900. Okay, we are going to rotate the label. Okay, it is better like that. We have the map, we can change it like this. Okay, so that we will have a better view for the ratings. And we can decrease the height for the genre and the TV shows by years. Okay, we can convert. Okay, so we don't show the title since it is about the map. We can convert it to floating. Okay, and we can put it inside the map. Okay, like that. So we have our general analysis of our dashboard. Okay, so increase the height a little bit to 1000. Now we are going to add the different descriptions of, or different characteristics of individual movie. Okay, so we have here the description. Okay, which is going to be like that. Then we have the date added. Okay, date added. We do have the duration. Okay, we have the rating. Okay, the release year, and the genre. Okay, so now we do have all the worksheets inside our dashboard. We can change or put our type in here. Okay, we can put the rating in here. We put the same thing, the title in here. All right. So what we are going to do is we are going to decrease the height of, okay, okay, and we are going to change the title. So we put them in 10, apply, okay. Same thing for duration. We put all the titles in 10 so that we will have a clear, you know, view and analysis. Okay, very nice. So the release year and the added year, we can put them side by side. So apply, okay. That added, we put them in 10, apply, okay. So we put them in here. All right, now for the genre, we have put it here. Very nice. Okay, we can change or format our title filters, so it will be in the center. Okay, like that. And for the title, put it in red. Okay, okay. The same thing for the title. We edit the title and we put it in red. Okay, okay. So now we have our information for each movie. For example, we select movie, okay, and we select the movie. We'll have the rating, the duration, release year, the date added, description, and the genre, okay. And here we have our analysis or our general analysis of our dataset. Okay, so we have the rating, we have the total movies by countries, and we can put it in here. Okay, we have the sum of movies and TV shows. We have total movies and TV shows by years, and we have top 10 genre. Okay, so here, for example, you can leave some space so that you will have a clearer view. Okay, and what we can do, for example, we can add the Netflix logo in our dashboard. So we can add the Netflix image. Okay, so we click on image. So you can download Netflix image as I did in here. So you can download it on Google and double click on image. You can add your Netflix image, okay, and you can edit. So fit image and center the image, and you can put it at the beginning. For example, put it in here, okay. So here we have our final dashboard, okay, that describes for us the different types and different titles of movies by country, by ratings, and by year. If you want to export that as an image, so you can click on dashboard, export, and you can find your final dashboard in here. So the first question is, what is Tableau? Tableau is the most powerful, secure, and flexible end-to-end analytics platform. As we will see later on, Tableau has some features that we cannot find in other business intelligence tools. So Tableau is the best business intelligence tool, and it is used for data visualization and data analysis. Tableau users can retrieve data from all sources, since we can connect to CSV file, an Excel file, we can connect to Hadoop, we can connect to AWS, Google Cloud, etc. And it allows to work with huge amount of data, which means big data. And as I said, Tableau makes it so easy to work with very complex data sets, since it has a feature which is called drag and drop, and also works with a very high speed, which will allow you to retrieve millions to billions of rows
The second question is, how can you define data visualization? Well, data visualization is the representation of data in the form of plots, graphs, and charts. Like, for example, line chart, bar chart, a histogram, etc. We can use data visualization for exploratory data analysis, which means that through the data analysis process, or we can use it to represent findings and results of a given task. Data visualization allows to explain very complex data sets in a very simple way. For example, you can explain an issue of a given project using some charts or some graphs. As I said, also the findings or the results can be represented in the form of data visualization, etc. Then we have, what are the different products that Tableau offers? We have mainly 5 types of products. We have Tableau Desktop, which we'll download on our computer. We have the Tableau Server, which is kind of shared platform for Tableau users, which is mostly used within companies. We have Tableau Cloud. We have Tableau Prep for data preparation, and we have Tableau Public. Tableau Public is generally used to publish some works of people who made very interesting dashboards. Then we have, what are the different data connections in Tableau? So in Tableau, we have 2 types of connections. We have the live connection, which means reading and retrieving data directly from the data source, which means that we will have real-time data updates. For example, if the file is huge, modifications may take time, which results in a low performance. Because when you are in live connection and you want, for example, to refresh your data, the whole data in the data source will be refreshed, which means that, for example, if you have 1 billion rows, everything will be refreshed and this may take a lot of time. This is why Tableau has defined this second type of data connections, which are data extracts. Data extracts can be part or the whole data set, which is created from the live connection data source and it is used offline. So you can create this part of data, or you can take the whole data set and use it offline. So when you will work with these extracts, you will increase the performance and work in a more dynamic way. Also, updates can be done manually at any time or can be scheduled. For example, if you want to add some new rows, you can just update it manually, or you can schedule it, for example, every day or every week, depending on your project. And generally, extracts are saved in Tableau Server. Then we have, what is Tableau Data Engine? So the data engine Tableau is used when creating, refreshing, or querying extracts. So mainly, it is used for managing extracts. So the sixth question is, what are the different Tableau files types? We have workbooks, bookmarks, packaged workbooks, extracts, data sources, packaged data sources. As you can see here, each file has its own extension. And for example, for workbooks, we have TWB, bookmarks, we have TBM, packaged workbooks, we have TWBX, extracts can be TDE or hyper, data source TDS, and packaged data source TDSX. Then we have, what is the difference between TWB and TWBX file extensions. For the first one, which is files with TWB, they are the Tableau workbooks. And workbooks hold 1 or more worksheets plus 0 or more dashboards and stories, which means that workbooks do not contain any data. Whereas for the files with TWBX file extension, which are the Tableau packaged workbooks, they can be defined as a single zip file that contains workbook along with any supporting local file and background images, which means that this format is the best way to package your work for sharing with others who don't have access to the original data. So files with TWBX file extension, they have both the data visualization and the data that is used for this analysis. So if you want to share your work, it is better to save it as a packaged workbook so that you will have everything that is necessary for your work. Then we have, what are the characteristics of TDS files. So as we have said, Tableau data source files have the TDS file extension. So data source files are shortcuts for quickly connecting to the original data that you use often. And data source files do not contain the actual data, but rather the information necessary to connect to the actual data, as well as any modifications you have made on top of the actual data, such as changing default properties, creating calculated fields, adding groups, and so on. So the TDS files, they will help you to connect quickly to the original data. Then we have, what are the characteristics of TDE files. So depending on the version the extract was created. So as we have said, extracts have TDE extension or hyper extension. So extract files are local copy of a subset or entire data set that you can use to share data with others when you need to work offline and improve performance. As we have said, when we have defined the connections of Tableau, so data extracts help improve performance and work offline. The 10th question is, what are the data types in Tableau? So in Tableau, we have 6 types. We have numerical values. As you can see here, they can be decimal or whole numbers. We have date and time values, which means that we will have the date and the time with hours, minutes, and seconds. Then we have date values, only the year, the month, and the day. We have string values, Boolean values, which can be true or false, and we have geographical values. So the geographical role can be, for example, a country, a continent, city, a region, etc. Then we have what are dimensions and measures in Tableau. So first, dimensions contain qualitative values. For example, they can be cities, regions, categories, segments, etc. And as you can see here, when we want to use a measure for a dimension, we have only 4 types. We have either the minimum, the maximum, the count, or the count distinct. Whereas for the measures, they contain quantitative values. For example, profit, sales, quantities, etc. And as you can see here, when we want to measure, we have the aggregation functions, the sum, the average, the median, the count, and the count distinct. And we have also the minimum, the maximum, the percentile, standard deviation, variance, etc. Then we have what is the difference between measure names and measure values. So measure names basically is a dimension and includes the names of all measures in the data set, whereas the measure values section contains the values of the measures. The 13th question is, how can you explain discrete and continuous variables in Tableau? So continuous, which means forming an unbroken whole without interruption, and continuous fields are in green color. So if you see the fields in green color, it means that are continuous, and also both the measures and the dimensions can be continuous. Whereas for discrete, they are individually separated and distinct, and they are presented in blue color, and also both measures and dimensions can be discrete. As you can see here, the discrete measure is presented in blue. We have sum of cells. The discrete dimension is presented in also blue, for example, city. Continuous measure sum of cells, it is represented in green. And the continuous dimension, we have the year, and it is represented in green. So this is just to distinguish between discrete values and continuous values from the colors. And as we have said, both the measures and the dimensions can be both discrete or continuous. How can you define a worksheet in Tableau? As defined by Tableau, worksheet contains a single view, along with shelves, cards, legends, and the data and analytics panes in its sidebar. And the worksheets, they are used to create the different visualizations that will be combined in a dashboard or used in a story. For example, in a worksheet, you can create line chart, an area chart, stacked bar chart, tree map, a heat map, etc. As you can see here in this image, we have the logo that we will use in Tableau to create a new worksheet. So generally, you will be given choices to choose which symbol is used to create a worksheet dashboard on your story. So this is the symbol or the logo to create new worksheet in Tableau. And here we have an example of a worksheet. So in the left we have data and analytics. Then we have the pages shelf, we have filter shelf, we have marks card, and we have also the columns and the row shelves. And in the right we have the different filters that we'll use, and we have the legend. In this case, it is the sum of zone cells, which is a gradient. Okay, so this is an example of a worksheet. Then we have, how can you define a dashboard in Tableau? So basically, a dashboard is a collection of worksheets with different data visualizations and tables that you can use simultaneously for your data analysis. For example, as we have said, worksheet is for a single view, and if you have more than, for example, 5 or 6 fields that you want to analyze and see the relationship between these fields simultaneously, So you are going to create several views from several worksheets. Then you will combine all these worksheets in a dashboard. And here in this image, we have the symbol or the logo to create a new dashboard. Here we have a dashboard example. For example, here we have Netflix movies, and we want to see the relationship between the different countries, the genre, the total movies, total TV shows by years. We have the ratings, we have the movies and TV shows distribution. So for each movie, we have the release year, the rating, the description, the type, the title, etc. So this is kind of dashboard that you will need for your analysis to see the relationship between the different charts and views created from worksheets. Next question is, what are the different objects that we can find in a dashboard? So when you create a new dashboard, in the left you will see the different objects, and we have 11 objects, and this object can be tiled or floating. But we have the horizontal, vertical, you can add text, you can add image, you can add the web page, data story, blank, something empty that you will fill later on, navigation, download extension, and ask data. So these are the different objects that you will find in your dashboard. Then we have what is the difference between tile and floating. So simply floating objects can be overlapped and one can be layered over the other objects. So this means that it's up to you to change the size of your object. Okay, so you can change the size, you can change the height, you can change the width, right? Whereas for the tile objects, they do not overlap and they fit together to fill the space in the dashboard. So you cannot change the size manually, or you cannot, for example, have one view or one graph on another. Okay, so this is the main difference between floating and tile objects. And of course, they are used when creating dashboards, since it is a dashboard that allows several data visualizations and several views. The next question is, how can you define a story in Tableau? So by definition, a story is a sequence of data visualizations to explain a given analysis step by step. For example, if you want to explain, for example, something that happened year after year, you can use either a dashboard or a worksheet. So you cannot use the dashboard and the worksheet simultaneously in a story. So either a dashboard or a worksheet. And these worksheets or dashboards, they can be used in a sequence so that you can explain a phenomenon. And also we have here the logo in Tableau that is used to create a new story. Then we have, how can you define workbook in Tableau? So basically, workbook contains all the sheets that are used for data visualization and data analysis in Tableau. They can be worksheets, dashboards, or stories. For the 20th question, we have, how can you schedule a workbook after publication on Tableau server? So in Tableau desktop, you select server, publish workbook. Then in the publish workbook to Tableau server dialog box, click schedules and authentication, and under extract schedule, select the schedule from the list. And as we have said previously, schedules can be, for example, daily or weekly, or for example, you can do it manually if you want. So it depends on your task. And this schedule, for example, it can be whole, for example, to refresh all the data source and add new rows, or you can add only the new rows. So it will depend on your task. Next, we have the different filters in Tableau. As we can see here, we have 6 types. We have extract filters that are used when creating extracts, data source filters, which directly filter from the data source. We have context filters. Generally, when working with sets, for example, if you want to create top 10 customers in a given city depending on a condition, you are going to use context filters. We have dimension filters for include and exclude LOD, where LOD stands for level of detail. We have measure filters, which are used for table calculations, clusters, etc. And finally, we have user filters. So the user filters, they are used when working with reference lines and trend lines. The next question is, can you explain the use of context filters in Tableau? So context filters can be used to improve performance, and they are also used when creating a top N filter. As I said, for example, if you want to create top 10 customers depending on a given condition, you are going to use context filters. Next we have what do we mean by parameters in Tableau. So by definition, a parameter is a workbook variable such as a number, date, or string that can replace a constant value in calculation, filter, or reference line. Where can we use parameters in Tableau? Parameters mainly are used in four different situations. We have reference lines, for example, which can be a horizontal or a vertical reference line. We have actions, we have filters, and calculated fields. Next, we have what is the difference between parameters and filters. So parameters are independent of the data source, whereas filters are dependent, which means that by default, parameters can be used with all worksheets within the same workbook since they don't depend on the data source, whereas filters they cannot because they depend on the data source. Nevertheless, for example, if the same filter is used in several worksheets, we can choose to apply filters to the other worksheets manually. So we can choose to apply a given filter to a number of worksheets in the same workbook. Finally, we have parameters can be used within calculated fields, whereas filters are applied directly to a dimension or measure. So as we have said, when creating a calculated field, we can use a parameter within this calculated field, whereas a filter is applied directly to the dimension or the measure in the view. Next we have what are the different joins in Tableau. So mainly we have four types. We have the inner join when we want to combine tables, and as it is defined, the result is a table that contains values that have matches in both tables. So if there are matches, we will get results. If the value doesn't match across both tables, it is dropped entirely. The left join, it contains all the values from the left table and the corresponding matches from the right table. And here, when a value in the left table doesn't have a corresponding match in the right table, we will have null values in the data grid. Same thing for the right, so we will retrieve all the rows from the right table and the matches from the left table. If a value in the right table doesn't have corresponding match in the left table, we will have null values in the data grid. And we have the full outer, which returns a table that contains all values from both tables. Here, Tableau by definition added union. So as we can see here, union is not a type of join, but it is used to combine two or more tables by appending rows of data from one table to another. So here it will append rows from one table to another, and the condition is that these tables need to have the same rows and the same data types. So the next question is how many table joins are possible in Tableau, and we can see here that the maximum number of tables that can be joined in Tableau is 32. So we can join up to 32 tables in Tableau. Then we have what is the difference between joining and blending. So by definition, the main difference between joining and blending is when the aggregation is performed. For the join, combines the data and then aggregates, whereas for a blend, it aggregates and then combines the data. So the main difference is when the aggregation is performed. So data blending is a method for combining data from multiple sources, and generally joins are used when combining data from different tables in the same data source. So for example, if we have several tables in the same data source, generally we use joins. But the only situation where we have to use blending is if we want to combine data from published data sources. For example, if we publish our data sources on Tableau server, then we cannot use joins. In this case, we have to use blending. Okay, so this is the only situation where we have to use blending over joins because joins cannot be used to combine published data sources. Next we have how can you define data modeling in Tableau. So as defined by Tableau, data model is a diagram that tells Tableau how it should query data in the connected database tables. And as you can see, for example, data model can be simple for only one table, or it can be complex with multiple tables that use different combinations of relationships, joins, and unions. And as you can see here in this image, we have joins between orders and people, and we have also another join between orders and returns. So data model can have one table, for example, only orders, or relationship between orders and people, or a union between different tables. And also, as you can see here in this image, we have the joins. Next, we have what is a calculated field and how to use it. So by definition, calculated fields allow to create new data from data that already exist in the data source. And when created in calculated field, a new field or column in the data source will be created, and the values or members of which are determined by calculation that can be controlled. Calculated fields can be used for many reasons, like segmenting data, converting a data type of a field, such as converting a string to a date, for example, aggregating data, featuring results, calculating ratios, etc. Next, we have how can you create a calculated field. So you go to Analysis and select Create Calculated Field. The following window will appear where you can choose a name. So where it is written Calculation 1, you select your name, and in the window you select your formula, or you write your formula. You click on OK, so a new dimension or measure will be created, and if you want to use that calculated field, you can drag and drop it to the worksheet as the remaining dimensions and measures. What is the difference between groups and sets in Tableau? So groups are used to combine related members in the same field to result in a new dimension. So if you have a field and you have several values and you want to combine or create different groups in this field, so you use groups. And groups are static. For example, grouping the states in a country into regions like East regions, regions in the West, regions in the South, and regions in the North. Whereas sets are custom fields that define a subset of data based on some conditions. So here, to create a set, we need conditions. For example, we want to create the top 10 cities based on a given condition. And sets can be static or dynamic, whereas for the groups, they are static. What is the difference between aggregation and disaggregation? So aggregation refers to the process of summarizing data by using aggregation functions, like the sum, the average, etc. Whereas for disaggregation is the process of displaying each row by itself, and by that the view shows a mark for every row in the data source. How can we define level of detail? LOD. So the level of detail of the view determines the number of marks in the view. And we have three types. We can either include these values, we can exclude them, or we can create fixed LOD. What are shelves in Tableau? Shelves are used to build the structure of the visualization, increase the level of detail, and control the number of marks in the view by including or excluding data. And we have mainly four kinds of shelves. So we can put our fields in columns, rows, pages, and filters. Next, we have what is the difference between tree maps and heat maps. As you can see here in this image, we have a tree map that shows top 10 publishers by sales. So tree maps are used to display data in nested rectangles. Dimensions are used to define the structure of the tree map, and measures to define the size or color of the individual rectangles. So here we have our dimensions and we have the measures. So we have the quantity, which defines the color and the size of the rectangle. The higher is the size, the bigger is the value, and the darker is the color. Whereas for heat maps, they are used to visualize marks on the view using colors. As you can see here in this heat map, so we have the higher is the value, the darker is the color. For example, the maximum value is 46. Heat maps are also like highlight tables. So both require at least one dimension, but heat maps can be created with one or two measures, whereas a highlight table is created with one measure. What is dual axis in Tableau and where can you use it? So dual axis is useful in data visualization for analyzing two measures that have different scales. For example, as you can see here in this image, we have in the left we have the sales, in the right we have the profit, and as you can see we don't have the same scale. So for profit, for example, we have negative values, whereas for the sales we don't have negative values. Sales are presented in orange and profit is presented in blue. So here we use the dual axis to analyze two different measures, which are the sales and the profit, which are defined one in the right and one in the left. What do you mean by blended axis in Tableau? So contrary to dual axis, blended axis is used to blend two measures that share an axis when they have the same scale. For example, here we have the quantity and count of orders. So in this case, we have the same scale and we use blended axis. Whereas if we do have different scales, we are going to use the dual axis. Okay. Next, we have how to deal with null values in Tableau. So sometimes when we drag and drop a field into our view, into the worksheet, sometimes we get null values. As you can see here in this image, we have 49 unknown. So in order to deal with these null values, we click on 49 unknown and the following window will appear. It will say to us that there are 49 values that have unknown geographic locations. What do you want to do? So we have three different possibilities. We can either edit locations, so correct the unknown locations, filter data, for example, we can exclude these unknown values, or show data at default position. Show the special values at the default position on the axis. For example, null values are shown at 0. So you have three possibilities when you have null values in Tableau. You can either edit manually, so you add your data manually. You can filter your data, for example, you can exclude these values, or you can use the default position. Okay. Next we have what is the use of marks card. So as we can see here in the marks card we have 5 different things. So we have the color, we have the size, we have the label, the detail and tooltip. And also we have a list to choose the different data visualization that we want to display in our view. For example, it can be a density, it can be square, it can be a line, it can be automatic. Okay, so it depends on your task. As you can see here, marks cards are very important because it will allow us to manage our visualization, our colors, and also control our visualization. Next, we have what is an area chart. So an area chart is like a line chart, but the area between the line and the axis is filled with a color depending on the fields used. It can also be defined as a combination of line chart and bar chart. As you can see here in this image, we have cells by year and genre. So we have the colors of the area charts depend on the different genres. And generally, area charts are used to visualize time series data. Next, we have how can you define a histogram. So a histogram is a graph that represents a distribution of continuous correlative variable. For example, in this image, you can see the different bins of age and the count of each bin. And in Tableau, only one measure is required to create a histogram. How can you define a bullet graph? Bullet graph is a variation of a bar graph developed to replace dashboard, gauges, and meters. A bullet graph is useful for comparing the performance of a primary measure to one or more measures. For example, you have one primary measure and we have the secondary measure, then you want to compare between these two measures, then you will use a bullet graph. How can you define a stacked bar chart? As you can see here in this image, we have the different cells in each month. And as you can see, for each month, we have a bar. And this bar is divided into different categories or into different segments. And as you can see in the legend, each color represents a region. So a stacked bar is a type of bar chart where values are represented in the form of segmented bars. Next we have what is the use of show me icon in the Tableau worksheet. So when we drop measures and dimensions into rows and columns, you will have all the possible graphs and charts or even tables that you can create using these fields. So the show me icon contains all the suggested and possible graphs and charts that can be created based on the fields used in the worksheet. How can you improve the performance in Tableau? So in order to improve performance in Tableau, we have so many possibilities and everyone depends on the task and the project. For example, you can use data extracts, we can reduce the number of fields using the hidden option, we can delete all unused worksheets, delete unnecessary calculation fields, remove unnecessary visualizations in the dashboard. If applicable, use the same filter for the maximum number of worksheets and do not create the same filter over and over. And finally, we have reduced the number of marks on the view. Next question is, what are table calculations in Tableau? So as you can see here, we have the list of the quick table calculation. For example, we have running total, difference, percent of total, rank, percentile, moving average, YTD total, compound growth rate, year-over-year growth. What is the difference between dragging a discrete value to color in the marks card and dragging a continuous value? The first example is dragging a discrete value. So when we drag a discrete value to color, it creates distinct colors for each item. As you can see here in this image, for segment, we have three different categories. We have consumer represented in blue, corporate represented in orange, and home office represented in red. Whereas if we drag a continuous value to color, it will create a gradient. As you can see here in this image, when we drop profit, which is a continuous value, it will create a gradient which starts from the minimum value up to the maximum value. What is the default duration of animations in Tableau? So by default, animations in Tableau takes 0.3 seconds. Finally, we have what do we mean by metadata in Tableau. Metadata can be defined as data that provide information about other data. So as we know, data can come in different formats and structures, categorized at varying levels of detail, and can have relationships with other data. So this is the kind of metadata that we can find in Tableau. So that's it for this video. I hope that you have learned new things, and good luck for the interview.